Hi guys, it's Angie with Fun Endeavors Tie-Dye Lab. Today let's make a gravity ice-dyed geode. The shirt's been prepped like normal and I have it turned inside out. For this shirt, I decided to do a single geode, and I'm not going to make the geode go all the way down the shirt. I'm going to do part of the geode and then I'm going to let the rest of the shirt gravity dye. So I decided I would start this geode up on the shoulder of the shirt. So I'm finding an area on the shirt where I'd like for the center of the geode to be, and I'm using a washable marker to mark that area. Sometimes whenever you're doing geodes or designs like this, you can lose track of where you want that center to be, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and make a mark. My center's not going to be the shape, but this is going to kind of let me know where I want the center to ultimately be. Then I'm going to pinch in the middle of that area that I just drew on the shirt, lift the shirt up off of the table, and slide my hand down to where I want to end my geode. I'm going to start tying my sinew lines where I'd like for the bottom of my geode to be, or the outer rings of the geode. I'm going to tie in toward where I want the center of the geode to be, because I think that kind of makes it look a little bit more natural, not as much like a bullseye. And if you notice, I'm kind of wrinkling up my fabric, tucking it in, moving it around, making it kind of messy before I tie a geode ring. I'm going to vary the distance between my lines of sinew as well, because I want it to look pretty random. When I begin tying the center portion of the geode, I'm going to go ahead and take my sinew down through some of that fabric to divide my center into a couple different areas. This is going to give kind of an interesting center to this geode. Once I have the geode portion of the shirt tied, I'm going to go ahead and place the shirt aside for a couple of days and let this geode portion dry out completely. I get better color saturation in the center when I dye geodes when they're completely dry. If you'd like a little bit more information about this topic, I have a blog post out on my website, and I have a link to my website down below in the description for this video. So here are the colors that I've chosen to use for my geode portion. I'm going to do it in a rainbow. So normally whenever I do gravity dyed geodes, I'll dye them in the muck, which basically just means that I will place the shirt down inside of a container, at least the portion that I'm going to dye, and leave the gravity dyed portion hanging over the edge of the container. So the shirt is allowed to process down inside of the runoff from the melting ice that's mixed with the dye. That gives me a pretty good amount of liquid to get pulled through the shirt. But because I'm going to do this with rainbow colors, my muck is going to kind of probably be a ucky brown color. And I didn't want that color to get pulled through to the bottom portion of the shirt. Whenever you're muck dyeing a shirt where you have the whole entire shirt down inside of the muck and you're doing rainbow colors, that's perfectly fine. But if you're trying to do a gravity dye, it pulls the muck through the shirt. So all those colors are going to mix down inside of that container, and that brown color would be the lower portion of the shirt. What I've decided to do instead is I'm going to rack dye it. So I have a metal bookshelf. I've put the shirt on the bookshelf. I'm leaving the gravity dyed portion hanging over the edge of the bookshelf. And I'm making myself an ice barrier around the geode portion of the shirt using some silicone cake molds. I have a link down below in the description for this video for where I purchased the cake molds. To hold the cake molds up close to the shirt, I'm attaching some wooden clothespins to my metal rack. For the geode portion of the shirt, I'm going to apply ice to the top of the shirt, and then I'm going to add the dye over the top. So if you're new to tie dyeing, that is referred to as DOI, dye over the ice. The ice I'm using is some ice which I got from Whole Foods whenever I purchased some refrigerated items. It was in kind of a large chunk, and I broke up the chunk. So the ice is small pellet ice, but it's kind of melted together in a little bit larger chunks. All the colors that I'm going to use on this shirt are from Dharma Trading Company, and I'm starting at the center portion of the geode with fire red, followed by deep orange. And I don't use a whole lot of orange whenever I do rainbows because for some reason orange just seems to overtake the yellow, which I'll put beside it. So I try to put a very small line of orange. Then I'm using lemon yellow, and I try to put a little extra wide line of that because it gets eaten up pretty quickly. Followed by electric green, electric blue, grape, and orchid. So for now, I'm going to leave the shirt and I'm going to see how well the dye travels down the shirt. Before I quit though, I'm going to add a little bit of additional dry soda ash over the top of the dye. I've included some process photos so you can kind of see how the ice melted and the shirt looked. After the first layer of ice melted, some of the orchid, which was the color right at the very end of the shirt, did start to move down the shirt, but not a whole lot. So I went ahead and added a second layer of ice. If you'll notice too, I've placed a plastic wash bin down below the shirt to catch any of the excess runoff dye. After the second layer of ice melted, there wasn't a whole lot of dye left on the shirt, so I wanted to go ahead and add some more dye, and I wanted to put it a little further down the shirt. So I took the silicone cake molds away from the sides of the shirt and pulled the shirt a little further up onto the rack or the bookshelf. At this point, the geode portion of the shirt is done. The dye has gone through to the back side. I have a few little bitty bits of ice left hanging out on top of the shirt, and I'm just going to leave those alone. The dye that I'm going to add to the shirt is electric blue, which is the blue color that I used up in the rainbow portion. That'll go well with the orchid, which is right here at the edge. I'm going to sprinkle the dye over the top. I'm going to add a little bit more dry soda ash. And then I have a pretty large chunk of ice, which I've made in a container that's meant for like food prep. This ice will melt a little bit slower than cubes of ice, and it'll stay on the shirt a little bit better. After this large chunk of ice melted, there was still a little bit of shirt that was white. So I moved the shirt a little further up on the rack. I added a little bit more dye and another chunk of ice. After this last chunk of ice melted, I took the shirt and placed it down inside of a plastic tub or tote that has a rack down in the bottom. Then I placed the lid on top of the tote and took it inside where it was a little bit warmer and allowed it to process for about 24 hours. Then I took the shirt to my utility sink and I began rinsing it in cold water to rinse out the soda ash. As you can see, the dye has moved pretty well down the shirt and most of the white is gone. After rinsing in cold for a while, I'm going to go ahead and warm the water up to hot and continue rinsing in hot water to rinse out the excess dye. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and untie the geode portion of the shirt, and I can either continue rinsing until my water's running almost clear, or what I like to do is I like to just allow the shirt to soak. So I'm going to run some really hot water in my utility sink, add some Blue Dawn dish detergent to the water, place the shirt inside the hot water, and allow it to soak. When the water cools off, I'll come back and change it out, and I'll continue that soaking process until my water is remaining almost clear. The Blue Dawn dish detergent is pH neutral, so it's going to help keep any of these dye colors that are soaked out of the shirt from redepositing somewhere else on the shirt. Then once my water's remaining almost clear, I'm going to place the shirt along with some Dharma's Professional Textile Detergent into my washing machine and wash it using a hot water cycle. Okay, so I've washed and dried and ironed the shirt, and let's see what it looks like. Okay, so what do you guys think? I think this one turned out pretty cool. I like the rainbow colors. I don't think I've ever tried this technique and used rainbow colors. Not especially with a gravity dye like this. And I like my geode. I think the center turned out looking really cool. My yellow didn't get eaten up either because I added that wider band of yellow. If anything, kind of the green got eaten up a little bit. As far as the gravity dye portion, it wasn't a true pure gravity dye because I kept having to actually move the shirt further onto the rack or bookshelf. So there are some gravity dyed portions, like especially on the back of the shirt, I can see them, and places where the dye did move, but it didn't move and flow quite as well as most of the other gravity dyes that I do. I'm not entirely sure why. Probably because I didn't have enough ice or a large enough area to put ice to force enough liquid through that shirt. And the shirt was bone dry when I did it because I have to have the geode portion really dry so that I get good color saturation through the center of that. So there were a few reasons for this, but I still think it's a cool looking shirt. I just wish I would have gotten more of that flow from the gravity dye portion. I mean, like I said, there is some, but not a ton. I think I would see more of that gravity flow if I had more color splits. The dye colors that I use don't have a lot of color splits, so I'm not seeing that either. But overall, I really like the shirt. But what do you guys think? Please drop me some comments down below and let me know. And if you've enjoyed watching the video, I sure would appreciate it if you would like it and if you'd subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you'll hit the bell, you'll receive a notification whenever I upload a new video. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a great day.